yourself a cold one.
They strike 'em, huh?
And listen to Ross Tucker break down the top college prospects on another tasty edition of The College Draft.
Yeah, it's Daddy Soda time here on the College Draft Podcast, presented, of course, by DraftKings and DraftKings Sportsbook. Just use the code Ross for whatever you guys are doing over there, those two places. Still accepting entries, by the way, for our terrific best ball draft on the Fantasy Feast podcast, going against me and Joe Dolan head-to-head. Should be a lot of fun. This show is always a lot of fun. It's always kind of an interesting episode because this is the last time that we're talking about the 2024 NFL Draft. Although, it should be noted, as certain guys have certain performances during the preseason games, we will bring back some of Emory's scouting reports and some of Emory's grades on these guys as things play out during the NFL preseason, which will be here before you know it. Starts in early August. The Emory I reference, most of you know, I always forget Emory. It's the czar of the playbook.
That's exactly what it is. The one and
Czar of the playbook at FBall Game Plan on Twitter, Football Game Plan on YouTube, footballgameplan.com/2024 draft guide. I'm Ross Tucker, the former NFL offensive lineman. You guys know I got the broadcasting gigs and a bunch of podcasts, Fantasy Feast, Even Money, Ross Tucker Football Podcast. You can check me out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. Check us out at Ross Tucker Pod. Emory's got that incredible YouTube page, Football Game Plan, on YouTube. If you really want to learn the game, we're on YouTube with this show and the others, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. And since there's two things you can do, really, right? If you missed anything, you can go back and listen or watch any of the last 8 episodes where we went over each and every team's draft and their top undrafted guys. And you can also go ahead and get Emory's draft guide, footballgameplan.com/2024 draft guide for anybody we may have missed here on this show. Emory, we're going to get into the AFC East today, and we're going to start with the Buffalo Bills. 2 picks in the second round. I think both these guys have a terrific chance to start. Keon Coleman, the wide receiver from Florida State, and Cole Bishop, the safety from Utah.
The Buffalo Bills had an outstanding draft, and we always half-jokingly talk about who brought the football game plan draft guide. As we go through the Buffalo Bills picks, I'm pretty sure I sold a bunch out there in Buffalo. So Keon Coleman was my number 2 flanker, 82 grade. You know I'm a big fan of his game and what he brought to the table. He has that dog mentality. Reminds me a lot of George Pickens and how he attacks the football in the air. And I wasn't worried about his speed because he returned punts, which tells you all about your quickness and footwork. That's all you need as a receiver. That helps you create separation. I spoke about that ad nauseum, but that's when you know football, Ross. You understand the nuances of positions and understand like what's overrated, what's underrated. His punt return ability tells you all you need to know about his ability to get in and out of his breaks. So it's a big-time wide receiver. He's going to be their number 1. Love that pick. Cole Bishop, by the way, was my number 1 strong safety with an 81 grade. He is a tremendous football player, and he's going to start for Buffalo opposite of Taylor Rapp. So I was a big fan of what they did so far with their first 2 picks. 81 grade for Cole Bishop out of Utah Sight Unseen program, and Keon Coleman, the wide receiver, number 2 flanker with an 82 overall grade.
So interesting that you referenced George Pickens for Keon Coleman because that's exactly who Greg Cosell compared Keon Coleman to as well on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. That's who Keon Coleman reminded him of as well. You know, I saw this interesting quote by Brandon Beane talking about Keon Coleman and learning, and it's a lot different than what he did in college, and he's trying to get the nuance down. I never know if it's like reading between the lines and it's like, oh man, he's struggling, or if it's like trying to temper enthusiasm or expectations for a young player. You know, it's hard to know when you hear GMs talk sometimes. What about their next couple picks, Emory? Dwayne Carter, the D tackle from Duke. I saw that guy have some really good games. And then Ray Davis, running back from Kentucky, same thing, both at Vandy and at Kentucky.
Dwayne Carter, number 1 defensive tackle with an 81 grade. Buffalo is on fire right now, Ross. You know what I'm saying? That's what, 2 number 1 overall players and a number 2 overall player at their respective positions. Carter was extremely disruptive up front. Terrific athlete. He was a baseball player that wanted to go play baseball and football. That's why he went to Duke. But he ended up playing just football. But he's someone that is so good up front. Could play any one of the techniques. He's extremely versatile. He's going to be tremendous for those guys within rotation because he's so good off the football. And Ray Davis was my number 8 running back, 76 grade. That's pretty doggone good. We're still in the top 10 in terms of respective positions. So fluid, so smooth, so elusive in the backfield, kind of like what they had last year in Singletary. So he brings that to the table to pair up with James Cook, who had a phenomenal year last season. So Buffalo's already off to a good start.
I think it probably hurt Vanderbilt more than they realized that Ray Davis left, because he had really helped them the year before win a couple SEC games, and then losing him, they just kind of lost their bell cow, the foundation of what they were doing. Let's stay in the SEC and stay with the Buffalo Bills. They had 3 picks in the 5th round. Cedric Van Pran Granger, the center from Georgia. The linebacker from Washington, no idea how to say this young man's name, Edifwan Ulafashio, and then Javon Solomon, the edge from Troy.
Van Pran Granger was my number 4 center with a 76 grade. I thought that was an outstanding pick as well for Buffalo. Just a fan of what he does. And you know, a lot of people had a higher grade on him than I did. You know, some people had him as their number 1 center. So we're all in that same ballpark. I thought that was a great pickup. Good depth behind McGovern, who could potentially even start for Buffalo as well. So they're chopping down trees. Olafashio out of Washington. Solid player. He's a run and chase backer, probably a core special teamer. I thought the Javon Solomon pickup was underrated. One, he's a Sun Belt player, but also he was explosive coming off the edge. He's an undersized guy, 6'1", 248, kind of that rush-in type player. Obviously, he'll be a core special teamer, but a situational pass rusher, and one that has done a tremendous job at Troy. Troy had one of the better defenses at in the Sun Belt Conference. It was a problem all season long, but that's the one dude, when you think about his stats, Ross, 49.5 TFLs, 33 sacks, 3 and 5 forced fumbles, 2-time first team all Sun Belt Conference. If you're first team all Sun Belt, Ross, then you that's right up there with, like, you know, you win the Heisman Trophy, and then boom, first team all Sun Belt. It speaks volumes, bro.
Their last 3 picks: Tylen Grable, an offensive tackle from UCF; Daquan Hardy, a corner and returner from Penn State; and then Travis Clayton, an offensive tackle.
Daquan Hardy, Ross, was my number 1 slot corner with an 80.5 grade. The Buffalo Bills may have purchased at least 15 football game plan draft guys. But all seriousness, I do love when I see this, because it lets you know you're not crazy. It lets you know that you're on the right track. And Buffalo, count them up: Cole Bishop, number 1; Dwayne Carter, number 1; Daquan Hardy, number 1. 5'9", 179. I thought he did a good job in that Ohio State game. He was locked in with those receivers. Despite being what they considered an undersized player, he was out there balling. I thought Buffalo did a great job in acquiring his services.
He had, I want to say, 4 touchdowns in the state championship game his senior year. Kick return, punt return, interception return, and as a receiver. And I was texted Penn State. I was like, Are you sure you don't want this guy? And then they ended up offering him again after he, like that late, man. You can still, senior year state championship game, you have a game like that, you never know. What do you have on the undrafted guys for them, Emory?
Frank Gore Jr., which I'm shocked he went there because they drafted Ray Davis, but he was my number 5 running back with a 77 grade, so slightly higher grade than Ray Davis because Frank Gore is so versatile. Like, I watched him tear up my Raging Cajuns defense. He even threw a touchdown pass, like a 50-yard touchdown pass, which traveled like 40 yards in the air because he was a high school quarterback, so he can throw. And you're getting someone that's super versatile. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. You understand how he's able to run the football. His good quickness, and he may not look like he's going to be a dominant player, but he dominated a lot of games on Saturday, and that was the one guy that really stood out to me that they were able to bring in as an undrafted rookie free agent.
All right, let's move on to the Miami Dolphins. I think we've talked a decent amount about Chop Robinson. What about round 2, Patrick Paul, Emory? And you can give a reminder on Chop Robinson too.
Robinson was a good pickup. Chop to me was someone that was getting, I don't want to say like he was getting, they were talking about Chop Robinson as if he wasn't a good player, but he's a really good player. He's my number 4 edge guy with a 78.5 grade, explosive quickness off the ball. And he's always in the backfield. And it was like, well, what about the sack numbers? Well, if he's in the backfield, he's causing disruption, moving the quarterback off the spot, funneling the pressure towards someone else, and someone else is making a play. So I like the fact that he's that type of disruptive force up front, in which they needed. Is if you're bringing in a guy that's a rotational player, rotational rusher, as you nurse back Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, that was a great pick for Miami. So I'm not ashamed to say that they got Chop. I love Chop Robinson. Patrick Paul I had a 76 grade on, 6'7", 331. They're going to put him at left tackle. He's going to learn behind Teron Armstead. He's going to get a lot of reps in OTAs and training camp. And this is someone that you kind of want to groom for the future. And getting him was a really good a thing because he's very tough to move off the spot, which is essentially what you want as a tackle. I had him graded as a right tackle. They're going to move him to the left side, so he's going to either get he's going to get that work on the job, that on the job training from a guy like Teron Armstead.
These next 2 picks are interesting, Emory. But first, Labatt Blue Light's interesting in terms of being the best light beer of all time. It just has a flavor to it. It has a taste to it that a lot of light beers don't. That's just me. And obviously, the millions of people that enjoy it like I do. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Next 2 picks, Emory. Jalen Wright, the running back from Tennessee. If Mike McDaniel takes a running back, you might want to pay attention. And then Muhammad Kamara, the undersized edge guy from Colorado State, had about a zillion sacks.
Yeah, he had a zillion sacks, and he was actually my number 3 edge rusher. So they got my number 3 edge rusher with a 79 grade in Mo Kamara and a number 4 in Chop Robinson. And both guys are behind 2 excellent pass rushers in Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips. So you like that the Dolphins saw a problem and addressed the problem. Hey, man, we can't go into a situation where we have no one that can rush the passer if both our guys go down. Now you got 2 guys that can rush the passer. And Jalen Wright fits in what they do offensively from running the football. If there's a lane, goodbye. He's going to hit it, and he's going to go. So now you have a rotation of speed with Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, and now Jalen Wright. Good luck, man, because when those guys get in the game, Achane and Wright, your defense is kind of tired from chasing around Mostert. And, man, they don't lose any speed. In fact, they may gain speed as they move toward the end of the depth chart. So I love that pick for Miami because it fits offensively what they want to do.
What about their last 3 picks, Emory? Malik Washington, the receiver from UVA, Patrick McMorris, a safety from Cal, and then Taj Washington, another receiver, this one from USC.
Malik Washington was my number 10 slot receiver, plays a lot bigger than his size at 5'8", 182. I like Taj Washington a little bit better because he's a little bit more explosive. He was my number 9 flanker with a 76 grade. So they got speed and quickness. And man, when you think about the rotation of speed, like most teams have like 2 or 3 guys that are like fast, right? Like dangerously fast where you worry about those guys. But Miami just went out and drafted like a ton of speed and explosiveness consistently. And that's going to burn teams all throughout the season. I just impressive draft and knowing what you are, knowing who you are and living in that world consistently.
Anybody on the undrafted side, Emory?
Jaquan Burton out of FAU, explosive speed, had a tremendous College Gridiron Showcase and Hula Bowl where he looked uncoverable at the College Gridiron Showcase, which got him the call up to the Hula Bowl. And defensively, I was a big fan of Storm Duck. I know he kind of fell out of favor at North Carolina, but he was good at App State, and he was also good at Louisville. This is a really good physical corner. And listen, Patrick McMorris, the draft pick, another one that out of Cal. I thought people wasn't talking enough about him. He was my number 9 combo safety. So overall, I love what Miami was able to do.
Let's move on to the Patriots, Emory. We talked a lot about Drake May, the quarterback, throughout the process. I'm more curious about some of these other guys and your thoughts. What about Jalen Polk, the receiver they took in the second round? And while we're talking receivers, Javon Baker from UCF in the 4th round, too.
Big fan of Baker, man. I thought Baker was one of the more underrated players in the class. He was my number 6 split in. Had an 80 grade on him. 6'1", 208. He has George Pickens-like hand-eye coordination, which is impressive. If you have great hand-eye coordination, there's not a pass that you can't haul in. Polk is someone that's very solid. You know, we saw Washington have a ton of receivers drafted. He tracks a deep ball rather well. And I like that they got 2 young receivers to pair with their young rookie quarterback in Drake May so they can grow at the same time and develop that chemistry. I thought that was a really good job by their front office.
Also took a couple O-linemen. Caden Wallace, tackle from Penn State in the 3rd round. Layden Robinson, guard from A&M in the 4th.
Wallace got good body lean, plays from a position of leverage more often than not. I had a 76 grade on him, and he was the 17th offensive tackle. So that tells you, when we talked about all draft season, how good this tackle class was. So I like what Caden Wallace brought to the table, and getting him as well as Layden Robinson was another good pick. He was a guard, good functional strength, good knee bend. So not only are you stacking talent at receiver, you're also stacking talent as an offensive line, and then along the offensive line. There's another guy, too, that I really like that we'll talk about later.
Okay. Then round 6 picks were Marcellus Dial Jr., corner from South Carolina. Joe Milton, quarterback, Tennessee.
Bazooka Joe. It's funny that they went and took 2 quarterbacks. This is like what Washington did with Heath Schuler and Gus Farrat. And we'll see how that plays out. Joe Milton
and RG3 and Kirk Cousins.
And Kirk Cousins. Washington understood you better take 2 quarterbacks if you take one high, right? Just to double down. And during the combine, Milton talked. Every time someone asked him about his arm, he spoke about his intelligence as a quarterback and how he's playing from the neck up. So I thought that was fascinating that he wanted to stress, like, yeah, I know I got a strong arm, but don't undersell everything else I bring to the table. So it's going to be fun to watch him in the preseason. Dow was somebody that I had a good grade on. He was my number 5 boundary corner, 78 grade. He's a fantastic press corner. And he beats you up, at the line of scrimmage and is good in that regard consistently. Solid East-West Shrine Bowl week. Someone that also plays bigger than his size. He's 5'11", 190. I thought that was a really good pickup by the Patriots.
Their last pick was Jaheim Bell, a tight end from Florida State. And then obviously I want to get your thoughts on their undrafted guys as well, Emory.
Bell was my number 4 H-back with a 77 grade. Good energy and aggressiveness. I thought he was supremely underrated. And he gives them someone that can get up and go. I think his ability as a route runner, because he's fast, he can create separation, is going to be big for these guys offensively. So 3 pass catchers they picked up after they drafted their guy in the 1st round in Drake May.
Undrafted guys?
Charles Turner, we laughed and joked about him. He was my number 2 center, Ross, 77.5 grade. That's 3 offensive linemen and 3 pass catchers. I thought Turner was someone that probably should have gotten drafted, having played tackle in his career before he played center. He could play on the move. He's good with his hands. We laughed and joked about his route running ability at the Senior Bowl. This was an underrated signing for the Patriots. He was the biggest undrafted free agent that really stood out to me the most.
What's your level of confidence in Drake May at the next level, Emory?
I'm sorry?
Your level of confidence in Drake May. Just your thoughts on Drake.
I think he could be okay, man. The issue we find in this industry is everyone wants you to you're either going to be great or they're going to say you're trash. We just saw this discussion with the Trevor Lawrence conversation. And it's clearly obvious with anyone with two eyes that this dude can play football, right? He's a good quarterback, and you kind of want to keep him around. I think May can be a solid quarterback for the Patriots. Now, when you compare him to what I believe a Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels is going to be, he's not in that same category, but you can see him being along that mid-tier type of guy, like that Jared Goff type of player. Obviously he's more athletic than Goff, but I say he's around that area. For Drake May. So I want people to kind of taper their expectations for what they expect. You saw some talk of him from people that he's going to be a QB, he's better than, the Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. I think that's so much of a reach. But can he play football? Absolutely.
Let's get to the Jets to wrap it up. First round pick was Olu Fashanu. Interesting for the Jets because they got a couple veteran tackles, but those guys have both had some injuries, so the Jets weren't messing around taking the Penn State offensive tackle.
Yeah, my number 4 offensive tackle, and that's not a knock because he had an 85 grade, Ross. We talked about this, like how great this class was. So already with an elite player off the board for the Jets at number 1 with Fashanu, who's, again, you could have length and not play with length. He has it and plays with it, and that's why he's so dominant up front as a tackle.
The next 4 picks, all skill guys, Emory. Malachi Corley, the wide receiver from Western Kentucky. Braylon Allen, the big running back from Wisconsin. Jordan Travis, quarterback, Florida State. And then another round 5 pick was Isaiah Davis, the running back from South Dakota State.
Braylon Allen was my number 1 running back, had a 79 grade on him. So I love that pick. I was like, okay, they got a guy that is going to be a back. I thought he should be a starter for some other team, but hey, kudos for them. I mean, you got Breece Hall, who was phenomenal. I had an 80 grade on Breece Hall coming out, so now you got a 79 grade Braylon Allen. Malachi Corley was my number 2 slot receiver with a 77 grade. Did the Jets spot a draft guy too? We talked about Buffalo. The Jets are on fire right now. And you know how I felt about Isaiah Davis out of South Dakota State, right? Isaiah Davis was my number 3 running back, 77.5 grade. Now, here's what I don't understand. Why double down on these backs when you already had Abanikanda, you drafted last year, who was also one of my top 5 backs in the class. So this backfield for the Jets is phenomenal, but they got some great selections. Davis has, Gregory Hines-like footwork, and so he can work front side to back side, good vision. Reminds me a lot, Ross, of Robert Smith when he played with the Vikings. He may not be as fast as Smith, but he's so smooth and so patient and such a fantastic running back. I love all of these. The first 4 picks for the Jets, I was big fans of.
Last 2, Quantez Stiggers, that incredible story cornerback, and Jalen Key, the safety from Bama.
My number 9 field corner, 76.5 grade. Obviously, he's a pro already. If you can cover in Canada, you can cover in the States. You go from playing in the parking lot to playing inside of a classroom. You're gonna be good, man. He's gonna have a fantastic career. Played a pro season already, so he can measure up. And obviously, he went down there to the Shrine Bowl and dominated. So I'm excited to see how he does in the preseason. And Key was someone that really stood out to me, man. Because Florida State, we talked about this. Had they been able to play in I'm thinking of Florida State, I'm thinking Alabama. But Key was someone, very good tackle on the move, showing that he can quickly score up and deliver a nice form tackle. But we forgot one, Ross. Jordan Travis, the quarterback of Florida State. That's what I was getting at. Had they been able to play in the playoffs and had he not gotten hurt, we probably would have seen him go off the board late first round because he would have been able to participate in everything and really turn the tide in his career. That's an underrated pick by the Jets, getting their QB of the future, in my opinion, in this young man.
Any undrafted guys jump out, Emory?
Jordan Travis, just to keep track, was my number 4 quarterback with an 80 grade. So the Jets, like I said before, we're doing great things. Marcus Riley of Florida A&M, return specialist. We saw them last year with Xavier Gibson, bringing him in out of Stephen F. Austin or Abilene Christian, I believe it was. HBCU Legacy Bowl, he had a really good week, but he is someone that does an excellent job in returning kicks. And I thought that was a savvy pickup because, again, new kickoff rules, you might find a way to get this guy on the field. 2 corners that really stood out that I thought really need to get mentioned. Al Blades Jr., yes, he's an older guy, but Al Blades can flat out ball. Boundary corner, 75 grade coming out of Duke. And Jarius Monroe out of Tulane was excellent. Another boundary corner, so they doubled down on secondary players to go along with Stiggers. I thought those guys really stood out to me in terms of undrafted rookie free agents.
The keg is kicked. We are all tapped out.
Thanks for tuning in to College Draft. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, and Fantasy Feast, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.